little trip down memory lane. On the question of interest rate rises, here's Labor's Deputy Manager of Opposition Business back in the Howard era, one Anthony Albanese, 2006 to be precise.
It's just time to move on, because what we've seen is a Prime Minister who has surrendered Middle Australia. We've now seen 7 consecutive interest rate rises since 2002. And just this morning, we find out that average home loan repayments for a first home have exploded past the $2,000 a month mark for the first time ever. We know that Australians now are paying more as a proportion of their income on interest rates than they ever have before.
I tell you, $2,000 a month, if that was your mortgage, you'd be happy with that, wouldn't you? Here he was again, though, 2 years later, 2008, when, of course, Labor were in power. Kevin Rudd was the Prime Minister. He was Anthony Albanese again.
They'll be trumpeting at tonight's function. On the economy, 10 rate increases in a row, which have cost Australian families on an average mortgage some $400 every month. Costello's $400 charge on average Australians every month.
So they were in government, but it was all Costello's fault. Joining me now to discuss all of this, One Nation Leader Pauline Hanson. Senator Hanson, I listened to Anthony Albanese in question time today. It was everybody else to blame, nothing to do with his government. A bit of a change of tune from back then, wasn't it?
It's a different tune, yes, by all means. What he's saying is because he was in government at the time, but now, blaming the government for the 10 interest rate rise at the time. Peter, since they've been in, all I've seen is Anthony Albanese splash money around. He gave $50 million to Sri Lanka. He's helped Ukraine, and of course we did have to help them. He's given $100 million to Aboriginal communities to combat climate change. He's actually given another $250 million to Alice Springs, which it's not about the money, it's about the authorities taking control of the situation. It's not about throwing more money at the problem that we have there. So the splash that's going around, the industrial relations bill that he brought in last year, that's another thing that is going to cause rates to rise. You've got councils putting up their rates. The electricity charges, he wants to pay subsidies to move from gas to electricity. You can't keep paying this. And now the social services are saying it's got to move from $48 a day to $73 a day. Who's going to pay for this? This causes inflation as well, and the cost of living. Of course, we've been through droughts and floods, and of course the cost of food, and electricity has been the biggest impact that we've had on this country. So businesses are paying more for their electricity, passing on costs to the consumer. But the thing happened in 2020, May 2020, when they stopped borrowing money from overseas and the government started printing the money, and they said banks hand all this money to the banks, now you go out and give loans. So they're giving cheap loans to people out there. Now 800,000 people are going to come off those cheap loans, and they're going to be hit with higher interest rates. But Peter, I'm not an economist, I'm just an ordinary Australian. But I can also tell you now that in the 70s, I was a woman with 2 children, flat out keeping a roof over my head as a single mother of 21 years of age. I had it tough. Then after that, I actually, had a second marriage and borrowed money, and at the time, on one loan, paying 19% interest, mostly through the 70s and 80s, people paying 10 to 15%. In 1991, I borrowed the money to buy my land over 30 years ago, and I was paying 14%. If you think you're paying high interest rates now, you're kidding yourself. The trouble with people is, these young ones, they want the 2 cars, the 3 TVs, everyone has computers, everyone has the iPhones, they want the $1 million house, they want, and I don't see the second-hand furniture. A lot of these I don't feel sorry for, because you've got to pull your heads in. And this is what I've said to my own children. You can't expect all the time, but these kids expect their parents to go without their superannuation to help them out of the shit that they got themselves into.
I don't disagree. I mean, I only replaced my sofa after about 25 years a couple of years ago. I had furniture that I had when I was a uni student. I mean, if it's not are broken, you don't need to fix it. But you and I know, having been in and around Canberra, highest incomes in the country in average terms in Canberra, they all sit around the table as they have their budget meetings going into the May budget. There's the distinct sense, when you look at the commentary in question time today, that the Prime Minister and his Treasurer behind him are out of touch.
They are out of touch, Peter, by all means. And the Treasurer says we're seeing a turnaround now. I don't see the turnaround at all. I see that we have problems with this going into the future, and that's why I tell people, don't overextend yourselves. Be careful what you do. You know, until we rein in foreign investment into our housing here, don't allow them to buy new or established housing. Bring down the cost of housing. Banks want to loan you more money. They're going to make more money out of you, and the interest rates, they're keeping you in debt. Governments should not be propping up the economy by giving these handouts all the time. People have to live within their means, as governments should, because what we are borrowing, what the governments have borrowed, and up to nearly $1 trillion in debt, someone's got to pay for that, and future generations will.
Spot on.
So until we learn our lessons...
Margaret Thatcher famously said the problem with the socialists is they eventually run out of other people's money, and that's very true at the moment if you look at our $1 trillion debt. I've got to ask you, you're in the Senate, you've watched her at close quarters. What do you make of Lydia Thorpe's defection yesterday?
Look, she wasn't a real good fit with the Greens at all, and I think it was tokenism why she got the seat in the first place. I see she's been destructive. She's a nasty piece of works. The way she treats that Senate, and she has no respect for anyone else. She's a black activist, and she's got no respect for the public. She's there for her own agenda, which is to disrupt the Parliament. And it's a shame, it really is. I'd like to see that if you are elected under a political party as a senator and you defect, then you have to leave the Senate and that seat goes back to the party that you got elected under. And I've been through it myself and lost senators, and I just don't believe it's fair on the public. I think she's going to be disruptive. I don't believe the government can rely on her vote most of the time. I think they will. But I even doubt if this referendum goes down on the Voice, whether she'll even be there for the full term. I don't think she'll last the full 6 years.
Fascinating. We will watch it closely. Pauline Hanson, thank you.